잠자기 전 하는 필사 노트. 펜을 먼저 준비하고, 오늘은 2019년 8월 20일. 제가 필사할 책은 빨간머리 앤입니다. 빨간머리 앤 두 번째 이야기인 A번리의 앤을 준비해봤어요. 그래서 이 한글판과 영문판을 같이 필사해 보려고 합니다. 전 사파가 너무 예뻐서 고르게 됐어요. 그러면 시작해 보겠습니다. 적어볼게요. A번리의 N of Avonlea. 빨간머리엔 이야기를 옛날에 어릴 때 재밌게 읽었는데 A번리의 N 두 번째 이야기를 한글로도 읽고 영어로도 읽으면 어차피 아는 익숙한 이야기니까 알면 어떨까 해서 해보게 됐습니다. 먼저 컨텐츠가 나오네요. It seems to me that a pearl of a day like this, when the blossoms are out and the winds don't know where to blow from next for sheer crazy delight, must be pretty near as good as heaven. It seems to me living so that you beautify your name, even if it wasn't beautiful to begin with. Making it stand in people's thoughts for something so lovely and pleasant that they never think of it by itself. An irate neighbor, a tall, slim girl, half past 16, with serious gray eyes and hair, which her friends called auburn, had sat down on the broad red sandstone doorstep of a Prince Edward Island farmhouse one ripe afternoon in August, firmly resolved to construe so many lines of Virgil. But an August afternoon, with blue hazes scarfing the harvest slopes, little winds whispering artificially in the poplars, and the dancing splendor of red poppies outflaming against the dark coppice of young firs in a corner of the cherry orchard, was fitter for dreams than dead languages. The Virgil soon slipped unheeded to the ground, and Anne, her chin propped on her clasped hands, and her eyes on the splendid mass of fluffy clouds that were heaping up just over Mr. J.A. Harrison's house, like a great white mountain, was far away in a delicious world, where a certain school teacher was doing a wonderful work, shaping the destinies of future statesmen and inspiring youthful minds and hearts with high and lofty ambitions. To be sure, if you came down to harsh facts, which it must be confessed, Anne seldom did until she had to, it did not seem likely that there was much promising material for celebrities in Avonlea School. But you could never tell what might happen if a teacher used her influence for good. Anne had certain rose-tinted ideals of what a teacher might accomplish if she only went the right way about it, and she was in the midst of a delightful scene 4 years hence with a famous personage. Just exactly what he was to be famous for was left in convenient haziness, but Anne thought it would be rather nice to have him a college president or a Canadian premier. Bowing low over her wrinkled hand and assuring her that it was she who had first kindled his ambition, and that all his success in life was due to the lessons she had instilled so long ago in Avonlea School. This pleasant vision was shadowed by a most unpleasant interruption. A demure little Jersey cow came scuttling down the lane, and 5 seconds later Mr. Harrison arrived. If arrived be not too mild a term to describe the manner of his irruption into the yard. He bounced over the fence without waiting to open the gate, and angrily confronted astonished Anne, who had risen to her feet and stood looking at him in some bewilderment. Mr. Harrison was their new right-hand neighbor, and she had never met him before, although she had seen him once or twice. In early April, before Anne had come home from Queens, Mr. Robert Bell, whose farm adjoined the Cuthbert place on the west, had sold out and moved to Charlottetown. His farm had been bought up by a certain Mr. J. A. Harrison, whose name and the fact that he was a New Brunswick man were all that was known about him. But before he had been a month in Avonlea, he had won the reputation of being an old person, a crank. Mrs. Rachel Lynde said. Mrs. Rachel was an outspoken lady, as those of you who may have already made her acquaintance will remember. Mr. Harrison was certainly different from other people, and that is the essential characteristic of a crank, as everybody. In the first place, he kept house for himself and had publicly stated that he wanted no folds of women around his diggings. Feminine Avonlea took his revenge by the gruesome tales it related about his housekeeping and cooking. He had hired little John Henry Carter of White Sands, and John Henry started the stories. For one thing, there was never any stated time for meals in the Harrison establishment. Mr. Harrison got a bite when he felt hungry, and if John Henry were around at the time, he came in for a share, but if he were not, he had to wait until Mr. Harrison's next hungry spell. John Henry mournfully averred that he would have starved to death if it wasn't that he got home on Sundays and got a good filling up, and that his mother always gave him a basket of grub to take back with him on Monday mornings. As for washing dishes, Mr. Harrison never made any pretense of doing it unless a rainy Sunday came. Then he went to work and washed them all at once in the rainwater hogshead and left them to dry. Again, Mr. Harrison was close. When he was asked to subscribe to the Rev. Mr. Allen's salary, he said he'd wait and see how many dollars worth of good he got out of his printing first. He didn't believe in buying a pig in a poke. And when Mrs. Lynde went to ask for a contribution to missions, and instantly to see the inside of the house, he told her there were more heathens among the old woman gossips in Avonlea than anywhere else he knew of, and he'd cheerfully contribute to a mission for Christianizing them if she'd undertake it. Mrs. Rachel got herself away and said it was a mercy poor Mrs. Robert Bell was safe in her grave, for it would have broken her heart to see the state of her house in which she used to take so much pride.